If you're struggling to keep up with life right now, whether it's mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, all these different emotions that you're feeling right now, I want you, well, I need you to pay me with your attention. And in this moment, nothing else. I'm about to give you a cheat code for free, no charges. And you're not going to get this in any self help book. You're not going to get this out of willpower alone. And you certainly won't get this in a new age concept where you think that you got to align all your chakras just to feel positive, right? That's all degenerate. That's not the answer here. The answer to your problems is worship, okay? Now, hear me out. Worship is not just being limited to sing in church or at a choir with other people. It's a weapon, but it's not just a weapon. It's a weapon that you can actually carry around without fearing. And that weapon, it has the power to shift your mindset, right? It shifts it. It breaks strongholds and all those limiting beliefs that you've had your whole life, and to completely change how you handle battles in life. So if you're Christian and you're watching this video or you're not, just allow me to still break it down to you as to what worship is, to prove to you that worship is not just important, it is life changing. Okay. So my first point is this. We're going to talk about Paul and Silas in the book of Acts, right? So I'm going to read it to you. Basically, these two were beaten and thrown down in prison for preaching the gospel, right? I got my book right here. I'm just gonna read it to you. But at midnight, Paul and Silas were praying and singing hymns to God, and the prisoners were listening to them. Suddenly there was a great earthquake, so that the foundations of the prison were shaken, and immediately all the doors were opened and everyone's chains were loosed. Okay? So now most of us in that situation, right? Imagine you're in prison and you have no way out and you're trying to think to yourself, what do I do in this very moment? Most of us, with our self-limited, degenerate ignorance, would either be complaining or even be questioning if God is real and why is God now moving in my life? But notice, what did they do? They didn't just focus on their suffering, they switched it and started worshiping despite the circumstances at the moment. So the worship didn't start after they got the breakthrough. The worship started before. Their worship caused the breakthrough, you understand? And that's the part that we miss today, right? We all tend to be so busy in our lives, our 9 to 5s, our what food are we going to eat today? What do I wear? And all these first world problems that we're focusing on, but we miss out on worship. We wait until we feel good to worship. But real power comes when you worship before the answer comes. Not after, but before. And when everything looks hopeless and you still choose to praise God, that's when your chains, they start to break. All right, let's go a bit deeper. In the book of Psalms, written by King David, right? If you don't know about this, right around his death, King David was worth around, some sources say over $89 billion in gold and other currencies. Some say over 200 billion. But regardless, he was very rich. And I say this because people disregard the riches that he possessed from the wisdom that is given to us, right? So listen carefully. Psalm 22:3. Yet you are holy, enthroned in the praises of Israel. Right? What does that mean anyways? It means that when you worship, you take part in creating a throne for God's presence to be manifested and moved in your life, right? In your situation. And that's why the enemy, the stupid enemy, he wants you trapped in a cycle of fear, a cycle of worry, and a cycle of stress. Why? Because the enemy doesn't want you to know the secret. As long as you're focused on your problems, you're not focused on God. So it's like the enemy is just trapping you and you let him trap you. You see this, the classic mouse trap with cheese. You are literally the mouse going into the trap, eating the cheese, and staying stuck there on purpose. That's how stupidly you look. No offense, but I'm not saying this just to you. I'm saying this for me too. Sometimes I do that mistake. Sometimes I'm the mice that just walks in a trap and stays there because I feel hopeless when the answer was worship all along, right? Think of worship as a spiritual override button that just breaks off all these chains that you've had your whole life. And it shifts your focus off the problem and puts it back on the problem solver, which is Him. Right? Think of a camera lens. At first, it all seems blurry and messy, and it's like the path you're walking on. Sometimes there's going to be times where you get lost, you get stuck, or you get bruised at obstacles that you try to overcome. But when you choose to become still and adjust yourself to align with the Spirit, everything becomes more clear. And worship is what realigns your perspective, the things you see. Instead of seeing things by sight, you start seeing things by faith. And that comes through worship, right? It reminds you that no matter what you're facing, God is still on the throne and He is still in control. But you don't see it. You don't see it. You don't see the changes He's doing in you. So you tend to focus on your first world problems. You tend to focus on the things that you can see rather than the things you can't. So when life gets hard, right, and it just shakes you, makes you oblivious of the spiritual realm that you can actually tap into, and it breaks you down and it tries to destroy your faith, when really it was never destroyed. It's just the enemy distracting you from the faith that you can overcome, right? The faith that you can achieve through different levels of potential that you have hidden inside you. And you keep doubting and you ask, what the heck do I do in this situation? Honestly, just shut your yapping brain off and worship. just worship, man. Paul and Silas worshiped the way out of chains. David, before his battle with the lions, he worshiped. So what's your excuse? Right? Do I need to tell you to go to prison and then you're going to start worshiping? Do I need to tell you to throw yourself right into a lion's den and then you're going to start worshiping? No, you don't need to get into these specific circumstances. These are just examples that they both went through, that they all went through. But for you, right now, you know that we live in a world where it's more of a psychological battle than physical. Don't you think that God should be moving in your life by now? Why do you think that people work in a 9-to-5 all the time, blinded by the fact that it's a 9-to-5 that's going to save them, when really it's not? It's just God. God can move in your life so quickly, you don't even know what to expect. And I don't want you to expect anything when you get right with God. When you get right in a relationship with Him, the steps that you take, sometimes it's going to be out of your own subconscious, because when he leads you, that's when you get the answers. But He also wants to work in you by making you wait and be patient as you take those steps. You understand? I don't want to deviate off the topic, but you get my point. So what's your excuse? Why can't you just let Him guide you out of your own problems and let Him redeem you from the circumstances and finally step in the promised land? So why don't you just take a second and worship God for where you are right now? Not for what He's done, but for who He is. That's the cheat code. I hope this message reached out to you well in your heart. I love you. You stay blessed. You take care of yourself. Ciao.